Yeah, sure. Actually, I do a lot of speaking now out at secondary schools, and I probably need to reenact this a little bit. It's not going to have the impact unless I do it, sorry, Nick, so hang with me. So at this secondary schools we go and we talk to the kids about assets and liabilities and how to go from that mum and dad world into the financial world. We deal with a lot of AFL players and we talk to them about exactly the same thing. So Al, my business partner, Al's standing up at the back there with a coffee. Al's
Hi, Al.
Al's the acquisition director for a funds management company. He's been involved in about $1 billion worth of property transactions to date, so he knows his stuff. So Al comes out to me, we go to these schools, we talk to kids about credit cards and cars and all the things and we stuff them up. It's usually split up in sections like this, but also take out a young kid, Sash, who works for me. He's 25 years old, he's got 11 investment properties. He was named by these guys, I think 2012, as one of their rookie investors. And basically what the exercise we do with the kids, we say, look, if you participate in this, you're going to understand the property industry like very few in Australia. So we get them to the point, we get the music cranked up, run along the front high-fiving, we've got this side all standing up and they're screaming at Al. I think the last one was St Bernard's, so the kids are going, St Bernard's, St Bernard's. And this side's going, loves property, and Sasha's there, and we're going, he's handing out books, and we said to him, look, books are pretty boring, so we've got cash, I've got a wad of money, pulled out money, and I stuffed it into the books, and Al's skipping through the crowd, he's flicking out $20 notes. Look, these kids have worked into a frenzy. And I said to him, oh guys, sit down. I said, who's been to a property seminar? I said, you've all now been to a property seminar. So, like I said, and same to the kids, it's just a matter of, you go through some of these things, pump up music, aimed at getting you hyped up, high fives. Smart investors don't make property decisions based on emotion. Yeah? You see these sort of things, then you should be, I suppose, expecting that catch at the end of the seminar. So what's the seminar designed to do? And I'm encouraging you to go along to them, because I always took a small bit of information out of them and took them away, and sort of built up my arsenal of knowledge over the time. But seminars are designed to usually hook you into paying for 5 or 10 grand's worth of more education, or sell you an overpriced property. So that's what they're designed to do. So the presenter positions themselves as a saint. Philanthropists don't promote the fact they give their money away. If someone's doing this, they're about to take more than they give. Yeah? So there's a few signs. What else we got? Visuals of money and luxury items. Notice before how I said Al was flicking out $20 notes to get the kids hyped up. Once again, money sparks emotion, and therefore makes you act irrationally.
I was just talking about that last night when I was sitting outside the waiting room at the casino and thinking about how plush it all looks and how it makes you feel like, you know, everyone's got lots of money, but that's not what the casinos are actually about, isn't it?
Casinos got lots of money. What else we got? Act now price reduction offers at the end or during seminars. If it's a good deal, why isn't it a good deal tomorrow? Yeah? You shouldn't feel pressured into making a decision about property or about education. Questions like, are you ready to change? Are you ready to take action? Are you ready to make the sacrifice? I always say, if you hear that, you're about to be the sacrifice. Yeah? No discussion of risk. I love talking about risk on property. Smart investors identify risk and follow a process that reduces risk. It's pretty boring, but Jesus is effective. Yeah? The promise of getting rich quick. Smart investors buy and hold and get rich slow. So get rich quick equates to lose money fast.
Yeah, the old adage, if it seems too good to be true, it probably
Pretty much.
It probably is. Next slide we've got here is about some strategies that you can use to reduce risk, but also deliver an outcome for you as a successful property investor. If we can run through these, and then we'll actually just start talking about some ways to actually research the market, cool. which you've developed, which can pinpoint a pretty real estate winner.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, I love talking about property. I prefer to give people some things they can go and do themselves. It's fantastic for any property promoter to sit there and tell them how fantastic they are, but hopefully we can provide you guys with some tools today that you can go out and will keep you safer as you move forward. I'm a big advocate of investing across the 4 capital cities. I don't worry about investing outside of those because there's more than enough property in those cities and for my lifetime, my kids' lifetime. So, if we think about risk, I'll talk maybe for a fraction about mining towns. Once again, another high risk thing, and I know the mining industry fairly well. We do consulting for BHP, Gemco, Ausdrill, Oz Minerals. My little brother works in the mining industry, so I understand the industry very well. What causes price increase and price decrease is population growth. So while a mine might be around for 25, 50 years, and it's easy to wrap some really good statistics around the mining contract and longevity of it, the reason for the price increase is because the infrastructure requirements a huge amount of population to deliver that infrastructure to support the mine. The infrastructure time frame to build that, the roads and services, only takes about 2 to 3 years, which is why you see a huge influx of pricing and rental increases. And then, historically, are done. Because after the infrastructure is built, about 70% of the population leaves town. The miners themselves live in these things called dungas, little huts, so they don't even need houses. So, put it to this way. Imagine 70% of the population left Melbourne. How do you think house prices are going? So, once again, it's just about identifying risk. Think risk first and return second. That's the way I look at every investment opportunity. So, what else we got? Treat property like a business. So, all right, I've got to talk myself up a little bit here. And the only reason I'm doing this is to give myself some street credentials to explain why property is a process. So I've had the chairman of the board of a funds management business. We've got about $600 million worth of projects underway currently around Australia. So we do high-rise apartments, commercial office buildings. I've had 5 businesses listed in BRW Fast 100, so I understand the process of creating fantastic teams to follow a process and deliver a measured outcome. I apply the same systems when I pick investment properties so that I don't get, and clients don't get that mixed bag of properties. Good investment properties every time. You can't deviate from it. So I'm going to talk about a process that I developed a long time ago, which allows me called Matt. Think of it this way.
I was just thinking actually beforehand about, and then obviously we've been on stage a couple of days now, and we had various different conversations on stage as you do, but just thinking about actually, the importance of research and strategy and the various other sort of property experts that I, have connection with my job as well, and about how so many of them have said, the few times that they've made a mistake in their property investment careers, and these we're talking about people that really know their stuff, is when they actually have not used their own strategy, or they've gone against it or thought they were too smart to continue to use the same strategy. And I was even thinking this morning on the way here that the amount of time that you actually spend, and sometimes never actually, if you're buying sight unseen or if you've got a buyer's agent, but the amount of time that you actually physically spend in a property before you decide to drop $500,000, $1 million, $700,000 on something is tiny. Like I spend more time debating about whether I should buy a pair of shoes, probably. So that's why it's so important, actually physically looking at those shoes and trying them on, as opposed to the amount of time that you actually are allowed to be in a property, especially in a hot market. You don't have much time to make up your mind. That's why it's so important that you have a robust strategy and you do all of your research before you can walk into that property. You know all the fundamentals that by the time you actually walk in there, that's the last thing that you need to tick off. So anyway, Cam has got this great strategy here, which is about a 3-step process, so you can identify the best property investment for your circumstances and for your strategy.
Yeah, think about it, guys. Most of you, I assume, work about 40 hours a week, thereabouts, and you do that every week of the year. You put so much time into making other people money. When it comes to buying investment property, a lot of people put little time into it. So while this process takes, we talked about the other day, if you've started from scratch to the end, probably 180 odd hours, it's worth spending the time, guys, because you're not buying lollipops. And so I explained it to my kids and to people. It's like having a bag of jelly beans. So what is there, 9.4 million odd properties in Australia? So a bag of jelly beans with 9.4 million jelly beans in it. There's one black jelly bean that you want to find in the bottom. It's one good one. So one investment property you need to find. Imagine trying to stick your hand in and pull that jelly bean out. How do you get that perfect one every time? Find that perfect investment property. So I developed this system, which is basically spreading the jelly beans out on the table and wiping all the ones away that you don't like, leaving you that good one. So the process first looks at markets. So I knock out capital city markets that aren't good for investment at that point in time. Then within that market, I find the best area. And then finally the property, which is the opposite way that most people pick property. So time and time again, you'll find the best properties that suit your portfolio at any point in the market cycles.
I'm just going to say, an interesting point that we've made over the last couple of days is, especially yesterday in a session that we did on whether you should invest in Brisbane or Melbourne, because both of those markets are actually doing quite well at this point in time, but at slightly different points in the property clock. is that, you know, apart from maybe Sydney and Perth, like you mentioned yesterday, the Australian marketplace is actually doing quite well in most capital cities. It all depends on, you know, what your strategy is. And I guess the good thing about Australia is that you can have completely different markets. So, for example, Sydney hasn't had a big sort of rush on prices for about a decade. But in that time, there's various places in Queensland, I live in Brisbane, it's had two where prices have gone up quite a lot in the last 10 years. But Sydney's done nothing for 10 years. But so each market is actually quite distinct. And so you can actually follow the growth around, can't you?
Yeah, and the reason I invest across multiple capital city markets, think about it, if you guys just invest in Melbourne, for example. So most people get serious about investing. About 30, you start becoming a little bit more, you know, mature, I suppose, and thinking about your future. So
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. So, and no one wants to be investing past 50. Ideally, you want to be sunning yourself by that stage. So really, if you sat in that one market, you've got 2, maybe 3 growth cycles. By getting some equity growth from one market cycle and then moving that into another market cycle at the right point in time, you can double or triple the amount of growth cycles you can have in the same space of time. And it's fairly easy to do it once you understand it. Think about growth trends. So if I'm knocking out capital city markets that I don't like at any point in time, I'm going to talk about an overall cycle, so it's 7 to 10 years. During that period, there's usually a growth period of about 2 to 3 years in that, and then it sits stagnant or has a correction at the end of it. The reason why it goes up and then comes down is because of supply and demand. Now, not many people understand supply and demand. Supply is developers like myself dumping huge amounts of stock on the market, and demand is population growth. So when a market gets to equilibrium, when there's suddenly becomes a shortage of supply, developers like myself, we've got analytics teams that all work for us, and we're not unique. Every developer's got a team that studies the markets, and we all move to the next capital city market about 3 years before that boom happens, and we start acquiring stock really fast. Now it takes me I've built a high-rise apartment about 3 years and a broadacre land subdivision about 2 years, so about a year sooner. That time frame is fairly ironic, but it's about the same time frame that the market heats up and it gets into a boom. So market hysteria is cranking out, and hence Perth at the moment, Sydney at this point in time. Then developers like myself start dumping our stock on the market really fast so we can maximise our investment. So after every steep increase, you're going to see that price correction dropping off. So Warren Buffett, we talked about, arguably one of the world's best investors. Invest counter-cyclical. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Yeah, so when the market's hot, move to another capital city market. So we've got land subdivisions in Perth over there at the moment, hundreds and hundreds of house lots, and there's camp outs at the moment on a Saturday morning when we do a land stage release. I wouldn't put investors into Perth. The market's too hot. It's going to come down at the end of it. So one thing, to knock out a couple of city markets, if you had a couple of years of strong growth, Perth, Sydney, knock them out and it leaves you a couple of good markets, Brisbane, Melbourne. Yeah? So start thinking a bit smarter about the way you invest.
We'll move on to the next one, which is actually about narrowing down those suburbs, those areas into suburbs. And I don't know, you would probably know off the top of your head like I do for Brisbane. Brisbane has 183 suburbs. And that's just the local government area. But Brisbane, you know, it has the biggest local government area, I think, in the southern hemisphere or something like that. But then we have the different regional councils around that area too. So you're probably talking about several hundred, you know, and certainly with Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast as well, hundreds of suburbs. And then if you're talking about, okay, well, I'm thinking about investing in Melbourne or Brisbane, you know, hundreds and hundreds of suburbs. How do you narrow them down to the ones that, you know, are ideal for your situation?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of methods. Most people think amenities first. It's a big buzzword. Agents love talking amenities. Look at the amenity in this local area. It's capital city. Every area's got the amenities. So while it's on my list, unless I can tick off a few other things first. So one really easy one you guys can do is you get a map of a city, and whatever area you're looking at, draw a line as straight as fashion as possible to the CBD, because everyone wants to move closer to the CBD. So what you're looking for along that line is large tracts of land or potential high-rise development that can add additional supply and take away price growth from your area. So there's a few things to go through. You guys, on your seats, you've got a certificate there for a book. There's a book I wrote for my kids a few years back on investing, and in the back of that is the check sheets that I use to when I add property to the personal portfolio. So it explains each one of those and gives you what you guys need to do to find that property.
Can you actually explain the oversupply of housing between that area and the CBD, because that seems a little bit around the wrong way?
Too fast, really? Alright. So what I look for is when I draw that line to the CBD is I look for thousands and thousands of house lots that can add additional supply, and once again, people want to move close to the CBD. I also talk to town planners, so local council, and I find out what planning applications are going through that add additional high-rise apartments. Because once again, if I'm considering an area and then moving towards the CB or one of the activity centres now, if you're moving towards those areas and people can do large amounts of development, it just dampens over a period of time that price supply.
And I know as well, some investors look for areas that have, predominantly owner-occupiers as opposed to renters, and certainly vacancy rates, equilibrium point for vacancy rates between supply and demand is generally around about 3%. In some areas, in Brisbane, I don't know about Melbourne, but you are in the inner city of Brisbane at the moment, actually you're kind of pushing 4% because we've had a huge amount of development stock landing in Brisbane over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, and probably for the next 6 to 12 months. But that's a lot of catch up as well, because there wasn't anything during the GFC, and of course we had the floods and the cyclone in 2011, which really killed the market in Queensland. Even though it affected a very, very small proportion of Queensland, the media coverage was such that everyone thought. I had people actually contact me from Denmark. And I live in a very hilly suburb, and they wondered if I was underwater. So they were getting coverage of it in Denmark, and they thought that the whole of Queensland was underwater. So good old media, and I'm a journalist.
I explained to people the flooding in Brisbane, it's like the Yarra flooding. A few houses are going to be, which is unfortunate, but it's not.
Right. So what we've got in Queensland at the moment, in most parts, apart from unfortunately Gladstone and Mackay, the impact of a lot of fly-in, fly-out workers replacing mining workers who actually live in those towns. And the reason why, look, resource companies, BHP, etc., are still businesses, and when the cost to house your staff in those areas gets too extreme, it's cheaper for them to fly them in and fly them out, and put them on dongers and Curtis Island and things like that off the coast of Gladstone, and it absolutely decimated the market in those areas. And unfortunately, when we come to shows like this, we do meet investors who have bought in those areas at the peak of the market, and now they're left, with a property that's, devalued by, $100,000 or anything like that in a very short space of time. So with those one industry type of towns, you have to be really, really careful, because if something goes wrong, it can end up being very bad for your portfolio indeed. Now finally, just the last one here, Cam, on your strategy is actually, if you've narrowed down, okay, I'm going to invest in Brisbane or Melbourne, I've narrowed down all the suburbs to wherever that may be, how do I actually pick the best property?
Yeah, once again, there's a number of checks you've got to go through. Buying under the median house price is really important. This one, I need you guys to understand your future net wealth is determined by the bank panel valuation on your portfolio. So what's the bank going to say your portfolio is worth in 10 or 20 years' time? Because investors live off equity. We draw down that equity for our lifestyle and to put into more investments. You'll never become rich through cash flow positive properties that don't go up in value. So I've never heard of anyone saving their way to wealth through rental income or earned income. No one goes, I've just managed to save $1 million. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? It doesn't happen. True wealth comes from doubling your asset portfolio over 7 to 10 years. So, how do we get our property portfolio the best chance of getting good valuations down the track? By buying under the median house price and understanding the valuation process. So, a good mate of mine, had dinner with him last night and his family. Jared, he's the director of CBRE Valuation Firm, so one of the largest valuation firms in Australia. We're pretty tight. We built houses next door to each other down at Torquay, so we built houses next door to each other. You've got to be pretty good mates. So lo and behold, over 6 weeks over summer and a few weeks over Easter, over a couple of beers, guess what? We're talking about property. So go figure. But I'm drilling pretty hard on the valuation process. Now valuers don't gift wrap these things. They're doing 5 a day. You can pay a couple $100 each one, and they turn them out really fast. They look at analytical data, median house pricing, local comparables, and they stick a price on it and they slam it out. So which is why, if you're buying in your blue chip areas at when a median house price for a city may be 500 grand, and you're buying $700,000 properties as investments, the valuer might be worth that on the sales market, but the valuer is unlikely to put that on as a bank panel valuation. Because the difference between a fair market value is what will the property sell for in 90-day sales campaign. Bank panel valuation is what will this thing sell for Monday at 9 o'clock. Obviously, it's going to be 5% difference. So, trying to get yourself, and knowing the process they take, in a city where there's a $500,000 median house price, I'm buying properties at $450, because it improves the chance of a good valuation down the track. So when you've got multiple properties, getting an extra $50,000 or $100,000 in valuation across X amount of properties is a hell of a lot more equity you can draw down and live off and invest more. So it's about being smart about the way you're investing, the property you're picking. Probably not properties that I want to go and live in, but awesome for investment, yeah?
I think we're getting the wind up, although I'm trying very hard to ignore her. Well, thanks for that, Cam. And just one more final piece of advice that you have for all of the lovely people who made the time to come and sit down and hear us have a wonderful conversation. What's your last piece of final advice for them?
Follow a process that reduces risk. Think about risk first, and then a process to eliminate it. And that's all smart investors do. How many people out here like talking about risk? I love risk.
A bit weird like that. So if you'd like to, since we've run out of time, if you'd like to come and speak to either of us, we're actually side by side. Cam's on 9:33, but I think you might pop over to our stand, which is 9:30. We've also got a copy of the latest actually issue of API on your seats there, so you're welcome to take a copy of that with you. That's actually the current issue, and thank you very much, and I hope you have a profitable and risk-free day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.